Thank you all for being here today. It's my pleasure to come and talk to you. Todd, you only did the $100 one. I thought I paid you $1,000 to talk to these people. Anyway, it's been great having Todd come on board. I'm a grassroots candidate. You know, I'm only successful here because of people like Todd, because of people that are in this room. I've seen many of you before. I'm glad for those who I haven't seen before, so that you can come and understand who Tony Grady is. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to talk a little bit about myself and why I should be your senator. I want to earn your vote. And then we're going to talk about something more important. We're going to talk about faith. Talk about faith in terms of the government overreach, because it also relates back to why I want to earn your vote as senator, because we need leaders in Washington that will stand up. I am a constitutional originalist and a physical conservative, and we need leaders that will do that. So, I am Tony Grady, and I'm running to be your next U.S. Senator. And will you help me fire Chuck Schumer? Will you help me do that? We definitely need to do that. But the step to do that is that we have to beat Jackie Rosen. And I'm going to make the case as to how I can beat Jackie Rosen. So in order to know something about Tony Grady, you have to know a little bit about my background. So I want to defend the American dream. And the American dream is based on American values. My parents were born in the Jim Crow South and grew up there. They ended up going to college. And my dad was a vocational education professor. After several years of teaching in different colleges, he got tapped to go into foreign service. I had the opportunity to live in Lagos, Nigeria as a little boy, and then later on I graduated from high school in Bangkok, Thailand. So I saw communism, I saw socialism up front and personal. When I was that little boy, in Africa, I lived through a coup. And of course, all this stuff wouldn't really make sense to me until later. So I became very patriotic, and I went to the United States Air Force Academy. And I became a pilot, and I became a test pilot. I commanded the B-2 stealth bomber test squadron. Now, people have told me I have to share a little bit about what test pilots do, because it goes over, most people's heads. But you guys enjoy flying in commercial airlines now, right? Let me restate that. Many of you like the opportunity to be able to travel across the United States in something other than a covered wagon. How about that?
Yeah.
How about that? Well, a lot of things that happened in aviation came at the cost of many lives. And out at Edwards Air Force Base is where we cut our teeth on doing the things that we needed to do in aerodynamics so that people can fly in commercial aviation now. I could spend the rest of the time talking to you about why wings are swept and they're not straight anymore and different things like that. But in the 50s, there were deaths constantly. So test piloting is a dangerous business. What we do is we go out and fly something that no one has ever done before. And I had the privilege of doing that in the B-2. I got to open the envelope and terrain following radar, night terrain following radar. So I want you to understand that we're talking about something with a wingspan that's over 100 feet, and it's not that long. But we're talking about 200 to 400 feet above the ground at night where you can't see anything. Okay, I could talk to you why I was chosen to do that, because I did it before in FB-111s and I was an expert on that. But I got to be the first human being to do that and open the envelope. So it was very dangerous. It was also a very expensive program, $24 billion. We had 113 personnel. Now there were many people who commanded the squadron, but I had the privilege of commanding the squadron at the tail end of the program where we had the most intensive flying. And so it was safe and successful and nobody died. It will be one of the most successful test programs of all time. So I had the privilege of representing you, the taxpayers, and making sure that we had a great airplane. So you heard much about the B-2? You kind of know what it is, but is it in the news all the time? No, because it works. If it didn't, it would be in the news. So anyway, so I kind of wanted to hinge on that because people say, well, you say you're a test pilot, nobody knows what that is. Well, now you know. So not only did I work that program, I also worked in the Pentagon, and I was the bomber expert and worked in the military portion of the president's budget. So the good news on that is I understand the appropriations process. The bad news on that is that I understand the appropriations process because it really doesn't work. So I have experience with that, and I think that's critical to someone being a United States Senator to understand, why we have cost overruns, how you can understand how those budgets are made. So after 20 years in the Air Force, I went to work for FedEx. But before I talk about FedEx, I want to tell you that now that I have your attention, what the most important thing is that you need to know about me. So this is the most important, now that everybody's awake. I've been married to the same woman for 40 years. And she's sitting back there at the desk, that's Donna. And we have 4 children. So, how many people here are parents? Okay, parents. Tell me, sir, do children listen? No, children don't listen. Well, mine don't listen either. I went to the Air Force Academy, and the oldest went to Annapolis. And worse than that, the baby went to West Point. Can you imagine? And then in the middle, we have one that was a molecular biologist and one that's been running her own personal training business. The reason I tell you that this is important is not doting on my kids, which I can do, but my children are successful. We need to elect leaders that want all American children to be successful. That's who I am. That's the most important thing you need to know about me. So now I'll put you back to sleep. After the Air Force, I flew for FedEx for 20 years. During that time period, I ran my own biotech company, and I found out what happens when you put your capital at risk and when you have your head handed to you. I understand about government regulations. So I've been experienced in that. So people ask, well, how'd you wind up here in Nevada? Well, I wound up here because after we got our kids out of the house, we were living in Dayton, Ohio, so we decided it was time to change the locks and move. So we're in the process of doing that, and at FedEx, the word got out that I was going to go to San Antonio, Texas, because we have a brother-in-law that lives down there, and actually a couple of brother-in-laws, but one near San Antonio that we were going to kind of move next to. And then here he comes on one day in the FedEx ops room, and here he comes, cowboy with his hat, mustache, and legs up to here. It's Walt Reep, my buddy, who was a Marine and Navy pilot, who flew with me at FedEx, and he's a rancher in Fallon. And he comes bounding across the ops room, and he says, "What's this nonsense I hear about you moving to Texas?" And I go, "What do you mean nonsense?" He says, "Look, you need to look at Nevada. Why don't you take a look at Reno?" I said, "Reno?" I said, "What part of Canada is that in?" He goes, yeah, you're challenged. You're geographically challenged. So Walt convinced me to take a look at Reno, and we house hunted in Texas, and we house hunted in Reno 3 years. We liked the high desert. We liked the mountains. It was wonderful. But what sealed the deal was the people. We've been in the Air Force. We've moved around a lot. We've seen a lot of neighborhoods. We've seen a lot of people. We liked Nevada. So we moved here. So I'm here in Nevada, minding my own business. And since I'm in Reno, you need to go to the Reno air races, right? Because they're world famous. So I go to the Reno air races, and I'm walking around, and I look at this guy, and I go, "I know you." He goes, "I know you." Comes to find out that he's one of my classmates from the Air Force Academy, and he's racing jets. So he takes me over to the jet tent where all the other jet racers are. And then I run into a guy by the name of Rick Vandam. Rick goes, yeah, well, I was an Academy grad, but do you know my brother, Dave Vandam, who graduated in 77? And I go, yeah, I know Dave. He was in my squadron. I walked into an instant family. So Reno was home. So I became aware of Nevada 42 years ago when I deployed in what we call Red Flag, which is a mock air war exercise that the Air Force tries to cycle all of its units through so that pilots get some indication of what combat will be like. So I always say that back then, when I was younger, I flew over Nevada at 600 miles an hour. Now I walk the trails at 2 miles an hour. So Nevada's been home. I ended up being the air boss for the air races. I worked for the air races 4 years. I was the air boss for 2. Good cop, bad cop. During that time period, safe, successful. Nobody died. And I'm really happy about that. So I did that with the air races. And it was through the air races that I found out about business here. And I found out that we want to attract high-tech businesses. And then I realized that our education system was not producing the future folks that we needed, the workforce for those high-tech jobs. That's what got me into politics. And when I talked to folks who knew my background, they encouraged me to run for lieutenant governor because the lieutenant governor is the point man in Nevada for business, and that's why I ran for lieutenant governor. Wanted to tell you all that because of this. For those of you who don't know or can't remember, I won 13 of the 17 counties when I ran for lieutenant governor. So that was my first stint in running for office. And oh, by the way, I won Washington. Okay, I lost to Stavros, who's a good guy. I like meeting him, Stavros Anthony. 5.8% was what I lost by. 7,000 votes. So, when I looked at my skill set, I go, Nevadans have indicated that they want my leadership. And when I looked at the skill set that I have, I realized that I needed to run for the United States Senate. Need to run for the United States Senate because the Democrats are trying to destroy the American dream. I'm successful because of the American values my parents raised me with. We have leaders, our president, rubber stamped by our current junior senator, Jackie Rosen, that do not believe in American values. Well, I believe in American values. So I have been tried, I have been tested. You can trust me to do what I say I'm going to do. I have that proven track record. When you elect me to be your senator, I will focus on securing the border, because without a border, we don't have a country. I will focus on drill, baby, drill. Yeah. And one other important thing, it's really also that we need to pump more and have a refinery. We haven't built refineries in years. And so the problem is gas prices go up because of the choke point. When we're changing over between winter and summer, strains of gasoline that you put in. So we need to look at building a refinery. But the key to that is we need to get our energy back to the place where we are energy independent. And then the third thing is we need to get the United States back to its proper place in the world stage, because we need to lead instead of react. Because when the United States leads, there's more peace in the world. When President Trump was president, we had those three things. So we need to elect him again. And I know there's some people that may not be a fan, but that's fine. I just want to let everybody know where I stand. I don't change my position for any audience. But in my opinion, and not my opinion, this is fact, when President Trump was president, unemployment was the lowest in my lifetime, especially minority unemployment. We were energy independent, and nobody in the world was messing with us. So those were the things that were happening at that time. President Trump was the only president that fulfilled the U.S. promise of moving the embassy, U.S. embassy in Israel to Jerusalem out of Tel Aviv. We have been promising it for years. So, in my opinion, President Trump delivers. I also know that Americans have a right to expect a certain decorum out of their president. And I know at times President Trump was lacking in that. And people can have their opinion, and that's fine because we're Americans, right? And we're Republicans, so we believe you should have your own opinion. In my case, I'm more concerned about performance. And that's where I stand. So if anybody asks me what's my position on Trump, now you know. So, why do I think that I can deliver as your U.S. Senator? Again, because I've been tried and tested, so you can trust me. But also, I'm the only Republican candidate running in this race that can talk about foreign policy and the diplomatic instrument of power, military strategy and the military instrument of power, economic policy and the economic instrument of power. I can talk about all of those topics. There is no other candidate running that has experience and is competent to talk about all of those topics at any time. So that's important. Also what's important is that the largest portion of our directorate, or I should say our voting base in Nevada, the largest voting group, are independents. It's 44%. So they're the largest sector. I am the only candidate that will be able to appeal to a wide range of voters. And if you are going to unseat an incumbent, you have to have a compelling value proposition to convince them to vote other than the incumbent. And today I stand here to tell you that that's who I am. I am Tony Grady, and I am running to be your next United States Senator. We will fire Chuck Schumer by defeating Jackie Rosen. Thank you. And so for all of you who may not have been there, you can go to my website, GradyForNevada.com, and that's Grady, F-O-R, Nevada.com. And you can see what the campaign is about. You can learn more about me. There's about 12 or 13 news interviews where I've been on TV. They're all up there on the site. You can see how I answer questions. You can see if I think in a way that you would like me to think. So that's very important. So that's the part of me being the candidate, and I hope that I can get you all to do three things for me. I need you to pray for me. I need you to vote for me, because I need to earn that. And then I need you to send me all your gold and silver. No firstborn children. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, now Todd's got some things here that you need to look at. I'm just going to give you a little second to kind of look at that, because today's concluding topic is going to be on faith. And as Todd mentioned, my book is coming out this week. We'll make sure that we announce it, and everybody, I've been working on this thing. If you've never, any authors in here? Are there any authors? There's one. So you know how hard it is to get. It's almost impossible. But they promised me it was going to be out this week. And for all of you that haven't been able to do it or weren't aware of it, the cover for the book is on the back there, so you can read what's on the cover. It's on the easel. But I have the chapter on faith written out. And you can see what it is about faith. But keep this in mind. So understand that when our country was founded, we had the pilgrims who came. And they came because they sought religious freedom. So we have an amendment that says that the government shall not make any laws pertaining to religion or the exercise, free exercise thereof. That's an important American value. That's a guarantee. So when we think about faith, and we think about it being an American value, from the higher point, let's remember that our founders acknowledged that there is a God, and God created families, and He also created government, and He created the church. And those institutions operate in certain ways to make our society what it is. And the founders enshrined that in the First Amendment. But we're looking at here with these problems. How come we have Twitter? How come we have folks in our government that aren't standing up for the First Amendment? We just got out of COVID. How many churches were shut down? Anybody here from a church that was shut down? That's not the responsibility of government. The First Amendment says the free exercise thereof. So our Constitution is important because it's the bedrock on what we stand on, and faith is something integral to our country. Now, because we're a pluralistic society, and also because we can't have a government establish religion, it's fine when people don't believe in God, because we have a pluralistic society. I don't think it's fine for them personally, but that's their right. But it is not the right of secular humanists to dictate how people who believe in God are to operate. That's not their right. So we need leaders in government that are going to protect our First Amendment rights and all the rest of the rights. Protect those who want to worship. Protect our faith. And so one of the things that John Adams said, our second president, is that the Constitution was developed for a religious and moral people. It is totally unsuited for anyone else. And if you get my chapter on faith, that's right there at the top, because it's important. So faith is strong. Faith is something that my parents taught me. Faith are those things that have gotten me through life. Faith is why I ended up marrying my wife. Faith is what I taught my children. Faith is an American value that shall not be infringed on. It will be upheld. And as your U.S. Senator, I will do that. So talking about COVID, and talking about how we had a government that totally went against that, we had people being vilified for not wanting to take the vaccine, which I should say is a shot, because it's not really a vaccine. But anyway, one of them happened to be my youngest son. Captain in the Army, he had been given command of a I always get this wrong. I have to have my ground people tell me. It's multi-role bridging unit. And for the rest of you, those are the guys that make sure that the personnel in the tanks can get across rivers, ravines, and all those things that stop armies. So his unit was a very storied unit from World War II that was stood up out of mothballs. So he had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to stand this unit up. And he was doing a great job. And they came to him and they said, "We want you to take this COVID shot." And he said, "I won't do it." And the Army said, "And we want you to order your soldiers to do it too." And he said, "I would not." So he did not order his soldiers, nor would he take the shot. And for 2 years, they threatened to throw him out of the Army. 2 straight years, constantly. Well, you're going to be gone by July. Well, you're going to be gone by August. Well, they were bluffing, because the reality is you can't throw an officer out of the military without a board. You have to have a judicial board because of the nature of how our country's put together. And the powers that be didn't want a judicial board, because then it would have come out that the military was trying to force an emergency use authorization shot on people, and you can't order someone to do that. And so I'm really proud of my son because he stood his ground. And that's what we need. We need people like my son to be serving our country. Now, I would like to take all the credit for him doing that. But the reality is my wife, okay? Because any parent here ever wanted to terminate a child? So, I kind of had that relationship with one of my children. But every time I wanted to terminate the child, my 5'2" wife grew to about 6'7", got very big muscles, and got in the way and said, "You're not hurting my prodigy." So anyway, so the reality is we're very proud. But that's what we're here about today. We're here about American values, and we're here about the things that we hold dear, and we need to stand up and not allow those who will try to deny that to do it. That's why we have to close the border. We've had problems with an influx of too many people into our country at one time in the past. And what we did is we shut everything down so that those who came into the country could incorporate, cleave to, understand, and believe in American values. Well, with an open border, with people coming in illegally, they don't care about American values. But why are they coming here? They're coming here because we have a country that is prospering based on the rule of law. All of the actions by the progressives that are in power right now are trying to destroy the fabric of our country. So I'm here to defend the American dream because I want better for my children and for your children. I want better for my grandchildren and for your grandchildren. And we need to take our stand now, because if we don't defend the American dream now in this election, the United States will look totally different 5 years from now. So I'm Tony Grady, and I'm here to be your next United States Senator. Today we talked about faith, we talked a little bit about me, and now it's time for you to ask me questions. Thank you for coming today. Thank you.
Okay, so Donna's passing around some cards. If you want to ask a question, go ahead and write on the cards.
What do you want to do about
a couple up in here already. And Tony, you'll be good at this one. What is your opinion of the National Defense Authorization Act that was just passed?
I have a low opinion of the National Defense Authorization Act. Let me just give a little bit of background on that, and I'll stop being long-winded. But we have 12 appropriations. Remember I told you the budgetary process, I understand that. So we have 12 distinct appropriations, and they're supposed to be handled as 12 distinct appropriations. And so when we have these two parties that are with the elected leaders that can't get along or whatever, and they come to this brinksmanship, they end up not doing the appropriations, and they end up getting these big bills called the omnibus bill. We need to get away from that and back to regular order. That's a problem. So the reason that I don't think highly of that is because hidden in that bill are things that don't relate to combat capability of our country. Also, I'm going to speak on a little bit different subject in terms of that appropriations bill because it's wrapped up in there. I'll just say that the gentleman here, John, just asked me what my position on Ukraine was, and I'm going to put these two together because it relates. Because of the Budapest Agreement, the United States encouraged Ukraine to get rid of their nuclear weapons. So that's one thing I want you to remember. The other thing is that at the end of the Second World War, there were agreements made with the Soviet Union about securing their border, like which countries wouldn't be in NATO. So what's happened with the folks who are inept in leading our government right now is that they're forgetting historical promises that we made. Russia has sensitivities to anything butting up against their border because of their flat step and the times they've been invaded. They've been invaded Second World War, they've been invaded by Napoleon, they've been invaded. So in the aftermath of the Second World War, there was going to be a buffer to make sure that the Soviets felt secure. So the Soviet Union's gone, but Russia still has that mindset. So as we start getting more and more countries into NATO, we're starting to bump up against their border. So I wanted to let you know that the foreign policy issue is very complex. People will go, oh, not another dime for Ukraine. Well, let me tell you something about Ukraine, the Ukraine authorization bill that's in the Defense Act that we just passed. Some of the money in that is to backfill our own arsenals for equipment that we've sent to other people. So we need to backfill those arsenals. So when you see a Ukraine bill and it has, these numbers and too many zeros behind it, understand that some of that is coming to help us replenish. So I wanted to let you know how this foreign policy thing also overlaps in how your appropriations bills go. So it's really complicated, but I'll tell you what, as a senator, when I'm your senator, you should be able to ask me why I voted the way I did, and I should be able to explain it to you right here and now. You won't like everything I do. And also, unlike some other politician that said that the waves were going to part and the sun was going to rise when he got in office, that's not going to happen when Tony Grady gets in office. What's going to happen when Tony Grady gets in office is the establishment is going to be scared. Because first of all, I'm going to be somebody that knows what's going on. And second of all, I'm going to push to represent you. So I won't be taking them to task. It won't be business as usual. So there'll be some things that I'll vote on that I won't like. But if the balance of it supports all of you, I'm going to vote on that. But again, I always have the responsibility to explain to you why I did what I did. But thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks very much. We got a lot more questions now. So this one comes up all the time. What do you believe the role of the federal government is? Should we fulfill President Reagan's belief to abolish the Department of Education?
I think the role of the government is national defense. Let's see, that's like securing our border. It's interstate commerce. And it's to make sure that the rule of law is maintained, like a level playing field, not an entity that chooses winners and losers. So I'm a small government conservative. I believe that government should be involved in what's enumerated in the Constitution. Now, I would love to get rid of the Department of Education, but if Reagan couldn't do it, Senator Grady's not going to be able to do it. But this is what I can do. We can shift the Department of Education from an institution that dictates to the states what they do to an organization that supports the states from the standpoint of gathering best practices. So Nevada's 49th, 50th in education. Florida used to be very low. Now Florida's like in the top 5. So there's probably things that Nevada can learn from Florida. So the Department of Education should be the repository for those best practices so that states, when they're running into problems, can go and seek out what those best practices are. So the Department of Education shouldn't be dictating curriculum. They shouldn't be determining what states do. States should determine that. So that's my view on that.
We've talked a little bit about the First Amendment and freedom of religion, but talk about the Second Amendment to preserve that freedom.
Where's Harry? There you are, Harry. You packing today, Harry?
Always.
In the statement, that's my position on the Second Amendment. Harry, I would be packing, but my campaign manager said I can't go kill people, so
Yeah.
they won't let me pack. So The Second Amendment says it's the right of the people to have and bear arms shall not be infringed. The right of the people shall not. Shall not means it will not be. So this may be controversial to some people. I don't think that there should be any law. We should have constitutional carry. We shouldn't have laws that restrict you carrying weapons. So I'm going to go by a story on that. So my wife back there used to be a showroom manager for a company called Best Products. Best Products went bankrupt, like, I don't know, back sometime, but they were like a Target or something like that. Not, I really shouldn't say they were like a Target, because that's denigrating them. Jumco, thank you. So one of the departments she was over was the hunting and firearms, and had all these guns. Well, there was a gentleman that ran a reform school in Fort Worth, Texas, and so these were boys that got kicked out of high school. Maybe the judge sent him over there. So he had these guys out on this ranch, and he was running this ranch to try to get these guys head straight. So when these boys would meet a certain threshold, he would give them a 22. So Donna was there, and she would sell him multiple 22s at certain intervals. To my knowledge, none of those boys have ever shot anything up. We do not have a gun problem. A gun is neutral. We have a dad problem. We need to do things to support the family because we have to push individual responsibility. I wish I had any of my kids here. They would tell you I was not their friend. They did not like me as a parent. But today, it almost brings tears to my eyes when they say, thank you for raising me the way you did. Because I don't have the problems that a lot of their other friends have. Because I taught them to be responsible. So that's what we need to be as a nation, to teach responsibility. Guns are neutral. They're just a tool. So I believe that there should be less regulations. I'd like to eliminate all of them because I think it was a rite of passage earlier in our history to know how to use a firearm. We may need to get back to that. But how states handle it is up to the states because that's the way it should be. Federal government should not be dictating how the Second Amendment is, how should I say that, worked.
So there's going to be a mix of opinions here on this one, and the card here is completely full because it has to do with the Omnibus Act on the budget and the CR that was passed. And basically the question is, how would you negotiate in those budget negotiations and use the leverage that Republicans sometimes have but don't always use and get some of the principles that you're after through that budget process?
Well, Harry doesn't know yet, but he's going to be in my staff. And since he's packing, I'll just bring him into the room, and then we'll get that all taken care of. So the reality is this. So when I was a lieutenant, I experienced my first government shutdown when the parties couldn't come to a meeting. I wondered if I was going to get paid. The important thing is I didn't have a family at the time, but my friends that did have families and kids, they were concerned. We were all concerned. Well, now I've lived through a lot of government shutdowns, and you realize that a lot of this is theater. You elect us because you expect your elected officials to take the country forward. So as your elected official, there are certain principles that I stand on. I won't compromise on those principles. But I realize that in a negotiation process, you don't get everything that you want. So as your senator, I will be trying to find the best common ground that I can with others who will be voting on the bill to take it forward. So I'm ready to do what we need to do as Republicans to make sure that we're fiscally responsible, and I will keep shaking my fist to be fiscally responsible. And it may cause some pain. It may cause some pain. I don't like government shutdowns. I think it shows bad government. But if you don't stand your ground on principles, then the other side's going to bowl you over. So you can only use tools like that when you're going to stand on principle. And I'm asking for your vote for me to stand on principle.
Reflect a little bit on the 2020 election and how that went, specifically the interference that was involved, and then also how do you see overcoming that in the 2024 election in your own campaign?
Thank you. That's a good question. It's an important question. How many people think that the 2020 election is the first time we've had election problems? How about, is the 2020 election very different than maybe a couple centuries ago? No. The problem is that we always have cheaters. We always have people that will do the wrong thing. The problem is that we have more of them on the progressive side who are communists. And for communists, the ends justifies the means. So we as constitutional conservatives do not believe in that, so I'll stand against it. The 2020 election put all citizens, or the majority of our citizens in our country, in doubt about the integrity of our elections because rules were changed in the middle of the election. In the 2020 election in Nevada, prior to it, ballot harvesting was illegal. In the dead of the night, our Democrat legislature made it legal. So things did not go well in our last election, and we need to fix that. And unfortunately, we have a feckless Supreme Court that wouldn't roll in on that because there was plenty of evidence that things did not go right. And instead of doing their job, i.e., governors changing election laws, which is illegal, the legislatures are supposed to do that. And he didn't go through that process. So we have plenty of evidence that things went wrong. So how do we do that? How do we fix that? How do we deal with it? I'm glad that the conservatives are a lot more aggressive now. And what I mean by that is that the Republican Party now is actually talking about, what do we call it? Bank the vote, okay? So, and what it's about is that we have organizations that within our party right now that are looking at who voted and trying to help people vote. Now I know that it's a pride of being in our democracy here, or I should say our representative republic, because we're not a democracy. We are a democratic form of government, but not a democracy. And that's why I'm talking to you today, because I want to be your representative. But anyway, in our democratic republic, okay, we should have leaders that will stand up and do the right thing. And as a senator, one of the jobs is to advise and consent and to confirm judges. So as your senator, I will not confirm a judge that doesn't know the difference between a man and a woman. I will not confirm a judge that thinks that you legislate from the bench. So part of the problem with that, you need to understand, is that it's a very slow process. But if we don't enter into it, it won't go forward. So that's why we need to elect constitutional conservatives. And so the other part that the Republican Party is doing in this state is they're also forcing the Secretary of State to scrub the voter rolls. It's going slower, and then but it's going. And then the third thing is that things are so bad that even the Democrats are mad at what's going on. So there will be less people willing to cheat than there were back in the 2020 election. So I think in 2024, it may not be pretty, but it will be better. And the last thing that I would like to say on that is you need to get all of your friends to vote. 175,000 registered Republican Nevadans did not vote in the last election. We can't win elections if 175,000 people will stay home. Adam Laxalt lost by less than 0.75%. So we need to get out and vote. So thank you.
And then one more thing, how many people know somebody who used to be in the Republican Party and then switched to independent in the last 4 years? Right, do me a favor, give them a call. Get them to come home to the Republican Party, because that's the way it'll be too big to rig. Okay? What do you think about the high housing market in Nevada, and any ideas on that? And what about school violence?
Those are related. So the high housing costs are a function, again, I go back to energy, because when energy is expensive, everything in the supply chain is expensive. So if we get our energy under control, prices will go down. But there's another factor that's going on here. Our federal government is trying to destroy the middle class. So that's a function of why housing prices are going up. They're trying to destroy independent contractors with legislation, different things like their Green New Deal, which is just really communism rebranded when we talk about that. So to fix the housing prices in Nevada, we need in the federal government to get our energy under control, get regulations out of there. I liked Trump's point that I think every regulation that you wanted, you had to get rid of like 10, that were on the books, something like that. So it's a net negative. So we have to do that to get the housing prices under control. In Reno, the starter house is $500,000. There's no child or young adult, I should say, that's coming onto the job market that can afford that. So we need to stop the federal government from destroying the middle class, get our prices back down so that people can hustle and be able to afford housing. Then the second one was on education.
Violence.
So violence. So the second one on the violence in education. I liked what happened in Louisiana. Did you guys ever hear about the dad squad? Okay, so those of you who didn't, this high school was having these problems. So these dads got these T-shirts made up with the dad squad, and they went into the school. And magically, the violence stopped going down. Goes back to we have a dad problem. And for all of those who are single mothers, we need to have surrogate organizations. Although I'm not high on them now, I was a Boy Scout. I was an Eagle Scout. I was a Scoutmaster. Okay? But now we have Trail Life America. It's an organization that's similar to the Boy Scouts, but it's a Christian organization. So when we have those single moms out there, we need organizations like that, like Trail Life America, that will help train these young men. We need people in the community to help train these young men. Other things that we can do directly in schools is I'm sure there's lots of veterans who would volunteer their time to be in our schools. And that way, it would help to secure our schools from anybody on the outside coming in. And I think the presence of those veterans there would help to start guiding the kids who are kind of acting up. So a little story on this. When I was Scoutmaster, I treated my scouts kind of like my kids. And you needed to do that. Problem is, these 7 senior scouts were giving the assistant scoutmaster grief during a summer camp when I wasn't around. I was up checking out becoming a captain in the MD-11 up in Alaska, and they were in Ohio at summer camp. So the assistant scoutmaster calls me up and says, so-and-so, 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 this is what they're doing, they're mouthing back to me and this and the other. Well, there was a very favorite camp out that was coming up, and it was a camp out that these scouts lived to go to. I called them all up, told them they weren't going. You should have seen and heard the parents that were complaining, the kids that were complaining. There were 7 of them. 2 of them left the troop. Fast forward, all 7 of them made Eagle Scout. 1 of them who left the troop and came back turned to his mother when he saw me later on and said, now I understand what Mr. Grady was doing. He was waiting us out. Because we need to deal with those problems in their youth and not in front of a judge when they've hurt somebody else or they've stolen property or something like that. Those are the things we need to do to fix our society.
Coming up this year in Nevada, we have ballot question number 3, I believe it is, which is going to be ranked choice voting. Talk about ranked choice voting in Nevada.
So when you get my book, you're going to find out that I majored in astronautical engineering. So I actually am a rocket scientist, okay? But my sister will tell you otherwise. But the reason I bring that up is because I can do partial differential equations. I'm a test pilot. I can go through all that stuff. I can't understand ranked choice voting. So we don't want ranked choice voting because it's some algorithm / whatever. You know, one vote per person for who you want. Not that this vote could be for this guy or that guy or whatever. And so I'm totally against ranked choice voting. And oh, by the way, for FedEx for 7 years, I flew out of Alaska. And one of the days I went into a Starbucks there. I apologize for going to a Starbucks. I was in there.
I didn't know that.
And guess who was in there? Lisa Murkowski. And you know, she's like a tall woman. She was like looking at me eyeball to eyeball. But this other pilot that was from Alaska started taking her to task. Alaska can't get rid of Lisa Murkowski because of ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting will seed, first of all, it will destroy the party system, and it will seed who runs your state to outside interest money. So if you want to maintain control of Nevada, vote no on ranked choice voting.
The biggest question you get out on the campaign trail is what to do about the southern border of the United States. And how do you feel about U.S. tax dollars going to the UN and non-government organizations to help people across the border? And do you believe Chinese military and other foreign enemies are making their way into the United States today?
Yes, and unfortunately, yes. Yeah, they're here, but we can deal with that. First of all, I want you to know, don't give up hope. You know, we've had our backs against the wall before. We're Americans, we rise above it. But we rise above it with leadership. So, the border is really simple. We need to enforce the laws in the books. We don't need any new laws. Easy. We can seal it yesterday. What we need is an executive who will do it. And then because of the other branch of government, the legislative branch, we need senators who have a backbone to hold the executive accountable when he doesn't do it. Our border right now is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. We are being invaded. So I actually think that the president has committed high crimes and misdemeanors. That's a whole nother discussion. But we don't need more laws. We just have to fix it. So the laws are in the books. We just have to enforce them. One thing I will say that's a topic for another discussion is that there are things in our immigration laws that we can work on, because right now in the normal flow of things, it can take 7 to 10 years to immigrate to our country correctly. We can probably fix a little bit of that. But in the beginning, we just need to enforce the laws on the books and seal the border. That's all we need to do. So what was the other part of that? That was it? Okay.
We got the most questions, and the most important question you get on the campaign trail, Tony, is give a little discussion about why you are the most qualified candidate to run against Jackie Rosen and fire Chuck Schumer, and how are you going to reach out to independents and even Democrat voters to win that race?
You're right, that is the most important, because that's the question that's in everybody's mind. And the answer to that is because my wife says that I'm the best. So if you have any questions? So on all seriousness, again, I think it's very important that you understand that in the Senate, we only have 100 senators. So they're very powerful. I shouldn't say most of them because I don't know. I know that some of them are bought. Well, a little history on my race right now is that I was pretty excited to run against Jackie Rosen because I have the skill set. I shared in the beginning that I've been tried and tested, so you can trust me to do things. And I have a track record of leadership. And I understand the military, foreign policy, and economics, all of that. So I start talking to the National Senatorial Republican Committee, and at first they're pretty excited about me. Then all of a sudden they get unexcited about me. Well, fast forward a few months, I found out because they've chosen who they want Nevadans to vote for. And I go, wait a minute, I thought your job was to help whoever Nevadans choose to beat the Democrat. I didn't know our party was involved in picking winners and losers. I'm here to earn your vote. So one reason that I'm the best to win is because when I win, it's going to be because you voted for me, because I earned your vote, and not because Washington, D.C. chose me. That's very important. So not only do I have the best skill set, and I don't know if any of you read Chuck Muth, who's a political commentator, but he's put it in print. Tony Grady has a skill set that none of the other candidates can touch. So, I'm qualified. 2, I will appeal to non-traditional voters because I'm not crazy. My children have another thought, but I am not crazy. It takes a lot of effort to be patient and to negotiate and to try to dig into things and understand what the essence of them is. I do not want to go to Washington, D.C. I have been there. There's only 1 week a year that I like Washington, D.C. That's when the cherry blossoms are in bloom. I am going to Washington, D.C. to work for you. And it's going to be a lot of work wading through the language. It's going to be a lot of work trying to stand against other folks. So 2 would be no one else in this race is going to outwork me. So that's another reason that you should vote for me. And probably one of the most important reasons that I will appeal to non-traditional Republican candidates is because in my background, I've lived in a lot of different places. I've worked with people who don't think the way that I do to reach certain objectives. And I think that independents will respond to that. And I think that independents will like the fact that I'm not the DC chosen candidate. When I win the primary, it will be because you voted for me. And I think that the independents will say, Tony's very different. He's not a career politician. He's not somebody that DC is pushing. He's not somebody that wants to be in political office because he's very flamboyant and, this is his thing. No, I'm going there to do one thing. I want to be one of those senators that you guys, the only time you hear about me is when I come back to tell you why I'm doing what I'm doing. Of course, I know that won't be true because they'll be calling me all kinds of names and doing everything. Like one of my heroes is Dr. Ben Carson, one of the most upstanding people you've ever met. A little story on that. The first political rally I ever went to was when he announced for president. And one of the reasons I went is because my classmate from the Air Force Academy, Vernon Robinson, was the one that headed up the committee to get all the signatures signed on the petitions to get him to run. And during that announcement, he presented those petitions to him. So, there's people like that in our government. But you know what? I don't care about those people. I care about your vote. And when I earn your vote, the independents are going to say, look, he earned their vote. He's not bought. He's a guy that has a track record. And he's not a career politician. Those are the things that will cause the independents, that cause me to appeal to them.
And last question, Mr. Grady. I know this is probably the toughest question you've had all morning, but how will we get the woke DEI agenda out of law enforcement and our military?
Thank you. I want you all to get my book because I believe that when it gets out there, it's going to cause tremors. didn't know the title.
Yes.
So it's called American Values, Another Voice.
Is that it?
Oh, you got it up on Amazon?
And it's available Monday.
That's it? I looked this morning and it wasn't there, so.
Sometimes they lie.
I'm glad. So it's called, just a little bit about the book. It's American Values, Another Voice. And the subtitle is A Pilot's View of Living the American Dream. The thesis of the book is that I'm successful because my parents raised me with American values. Today, we have leaders that do not support American values. We need better leaders. That's the whole book when you get finished with it. But the reason I bring it up is because I have a section on DEI. Understand that DEI is nothing but communism, period. I don't care what anybody says. I won't bore you with the history, but one thing that's important that you need to understand is that Karl Marx had the dialectic that was economic. And what I mean by that is that there are those who are oppressors and those who are oppressed. And oh, by the way, the bourgeois businessmen are the oppressors and the workers are oppressed. So they had the Soviet Union and the Bolsheviks, right? Well, the problem is that there was this guy who happened to be pretty smart, but diabolical, named Antonio Gramsci. So Gramsci was an Italian, and he was so dangerous that he spent most of his life, they kept him in jail. Even in jail, he was still diabolical. So he looked at the Soviet Union and goes, we had our revolution there. What happened to England and what happened to the United States? How come the proletariat hasn't raised, the workers haven't raised up and caused revolution? And he realized, because they were all happy. They were fed, they had houses, they had families and everything. So Gramsci took the economic dialectic of Marx and turned it on his head and said, the reason the West is surviving is because of its institutions. So he took the oppressor oppressed and changed it to institutions. So he attacked schools, the churches, government. What we're seeing in woke right now is the great-grandchild of Gramsci, because our institutions are against us. So this is how we turn it around. First of all, elect me, please. But we need to lock arms with folks that believe in American values. That's the first thing we need to do. When I am your senator, I will not confirm a judge that doesn't know the difference between a man and a woman, because you know that she's playing with us, because she's not stupid. Okay? The Constitution is something that the progressives hate because it stops their agenda. So I will uphold it. So we will uphold the Constitution, that's first. I'm from the Air Force Academy. We have some other Air Force Academy guys here. My institution's gone woke. When we were in school, 90% of our instructors wore uniforms. And in the book, you'll see how the Vietnam era guys affected me, because they affected me quite a bit, especially POWs. But anyway, I err, or I should say I digress. So in my institution today, they have 40% on the faculty, and the United States Air Force Academy has gone woke. So we need to get an executive that will clean house. I would advocate firing all the 4-star and 3-star generals we have right now. Get rid of them.
Amen. Amen.
Call out of retirement combat leaders to mentor the next round of 3 and 4-star generals. Now, the reason you need to keep the 1 and 2-star generals is because administratively, the organizations need to keep operating, and you need folks at that level to keep them operating. So, get these combat leaders to shepherd the new 3 and 4-star generals that would come in, and then after we stand them up, call through the 1 and 2 stars to see who we need to keep and who we don't. We need combat leaders. The military is having problems making their quotas. They're having problems making their quotas because young people don't want to go into a woke military. They want vision. They want to be part of an organization that stands for something. And DEI is nothing. My parents believe in what Martin Luther King said, that people should be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. It is reprehensible for progressives to say, well, if you're black, you can't get anywhere unless I help you. Excuse me? When I became the commander of the B-2 Stealth Bomber Test Squadron, I will tell you that there was severe competition on that. The only problem is one of the other guys, I really liked him. But in true Klingon style, I assassinated him. You belittle a person when you think, or you make them think that they have a different standard than you do. One of the things that I use with my children is that you always set the bar high. Because one of the things that happens when you set the bar high is that even if you don't reach it, you will go further than you would have gone had the bar not been set high. So, leadership is the problem. I heard a lecture by a Marine Corps general 2 months ago who's retired, and he said the rank and file are fine. You need to give them good training, good equipment, and good leadership. So the answer to our woke and DEI is we need to fix the leadership. And I hope we change our executive. And I know if President Trump gets elected, he will clean house. Okay, and we need to clean house. We need to clean house.
Ladies and gentlemen, the man who's going to help fire Chuck Schumer, your next senator from Nevada, Tony Grady. We got a few t-shirts. We'd love to have some of you wear those t-shirts around town. If you want to come up here, we're going to be taking some pictures with Tony right here in front of the American flag, and we'll get you a t-shirt. Thank you all very much for coming. We really appreciate it.